Okay. Sweet. Thanks for coming, everyone. We've just got half an hour to talk a bit about career progression in engineering, using progression for that specifically, and also just generally. It's a pretty small group, so I'll keep it pretty informal. If anyone's got any questions or thoughts along the way, just unmute and jump in. That's absolutely fine, or put it in the chat and we can come back to it. I guess first thing, I'd love to know who's familiar with progression, the app already, and who's not. Has anyone used it before? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been rolled out at my company like in the last, I want to say 2-3 months. Yeah, so we're getting used to it. We're using it, yeah, obviously for our next performance review, but I mainly use the comparison tool to know obviously what I need to achieve for the next level, and then I use it for my reports as well. What gaps they need to fill in to get to the next level.
Awesome. You at Trainline, Paul?
Yes.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Let me figure out which tab I'm in, and then. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick demo of progression itself. Going to go through some sort of tips and tricks and lessons and problems I've seen in our customers and generally in the engineering industry about career frameworks and career progression. A little bit touch on general career progression in engineering, and I'll try and leave lots of time for questions. As I said, we're a small group, so maybe we could just chat about things that we're sort of seeing or struggling with. So without further ado, what is progression? Well, you heard from Paul a tiny bit what it is. If you're not familiar, progression is what we call a career development platform. Primarily, it enables you to build, host, and interact with your career framework. That's the thing you're seeing on the right there. Probably looks fairly familiar if you've been in management or engineering for a while. Fundamentally, we want to give people the clarity on what their current role requires from them, what their future role might require from them, how they can sort of meet the two, and any other roles in the organization so that they can figure out what they want to do. And on top of the framework that you see, we allow you to track evidence against those skills so that you can keep track of how you're doing and engage with skill growth in general, which is something that isn't easy to do with everything else that's going on in our day jobs. Our priorities at Progression are to help you create content fast if you're sort of someone who needs to create that framework and keep it maintained, and empower people to engage with it. And fundamentally help everyone own their career story, which is what we want to do. We want to help everyone take a bit more ownership of that. So I'm going to give a real quick demo. Let's see how quick we can do this. People seeing this? I hope so.
Yep.
I'm seeing nods. Sweet. So this is Progression. What you can see here is my company's sort of homepage, Samco. And this is sort of the organization homepage where you can see a little preview of who's in the org and which teams are in my company. Progression revolves around teams. Teams sometimes called like communities of practice or disciplines, groups of people who share similar skill set. So as you can see, we've got engineering and we've got product design here, but you can obviously have whatever you like. You can see statuses on these teams, so you can see that one of these teams is in review, it's being rolled out now. So if you're someone responsible for creating, rolling out frameworks at your company, Progression is super helpful in managing that rollout. And we have one team that's live and even public, which actually gives you a public domain if you choose to use it, which you can share publicly and people can see your framework, and it sort of helps publicize that part of your company. So let's jump into our engineering team. Teams have sort of 3 views in Progression. Here's the first one. We call it positions. Hopefully it'll look pretty familiar to you. It is basically an org chart for that team, the roles within that team in their seniority order, and any different tracks that you might have. You can see here we have an IC track and a management track, basically going from associate software engineer up to staff, and likewise engineering manager up to director. If I'm building this, you're seeing me sort of as an editor, so I can add new positions, I can reorder things, I can copy things, and add people to them. You can see there are people in these roles too. If I click into one of these positions, it gives me quite a lot, but this is sort of a position in a single page. You can see that we have a description of the position, some metadata like its seniority level. I can add salary. I can add a hiring link. So if I want people to know that a position is being hired for, it helps with internal mobility. And the bulk of it is this list of skills. And this is a sort of the requirements for this position. So you can see here that this particular position requires technical understanding at level 2, using data at level 2, et cetera, et cetera. And this sort of is the fundamental piece that if this is my position, I can see exactly what's required from me, and how to hit those sort of what good looks like. Most content in our library in progression, if you choose to use content from our library, has what we call examples, which are really cool. We find them, we hear that they're so useful. They're examples of how that skill can be demonstrated day to day. So it really brings it into reality and helps you understand what's required of you. So that's a position, hopefully pretty self-explanatory, just helpful to edit it, keep it all up to date, and have all this different bits of data presented really clearly. So that's one position. If I wanted to see all positions in my team, I navigate to the framework view. And this shows me all the positions in their seniority order, and all the skills and what level each of those skills is required. So this might look familiar if you use an Excel spreadsheet to create one of these in the past. This basically allows me to see the whole team. But if I'm editing this team and making changes, I can quickly change levels. I can add skills. I can remove them. I can even see comments on positions and skills that are still open that need my attention. It's a bit more of a collaborative process. Finally, the skills view. This is useful to sort of keep track of all the skills in the team, see how they're categorized, and make sure we've got the right sort of zoom level for every skill. Are we gone too broad? Are we gone too narrow? And sort of manage this skill definition here. We've recently released a cool feature where I can lock certain categories so that if this is like a core set of skills that every team should have, I can lock that and then editors can't change it. So that's the sort of skill view, and generally the team view. That might be all you get. I think, Paul, at Trendline, that's kind of the bulk of what you're getting, along with the comparison view, like you said. However, there is another half to the app called the Grow. We call it the Grow side of the app, and this helps you as team members engage with the skills and with this framework. The fundamental way you do that is with a check-in. So if I start a new check-in now, I can choose who's my assessor and choose which position. I'm going to choose the position I'm currently in because I want to check in against that position and see how I'm doing. So I open this check-in. Check-in is fundamentally me going through the skills that are in my position. I can read them, and I can say whether I'm working towards meeting or exceeding these skills for each one. And it basically helps me go through and reflect and check in with how I'm doing. So once I've done all of these, I'll have sort of an idea of how I'm doing against my role. I just want to highlight a couple of really cool things that we've shipped recently. First one you'll see here is 3 updates. I'm going to come back to updates, but this is really important because it shows me all the things I've done in the app since my last check-in, and it might be 3 or 6 months since my last check-in. And I can't remember what I did 2 weeks ago, let alone 3 or 6 months ago. So keeping track of everything that I've done in that time helps me realize, like, oh, actually, I did do a bunch of things that show I'm demonstrating the skill. So I can now sort of remember those and add it in. And the other really cool thing is I can suggest an improvement. And if you're responsible for managing this content and keeping it up to date, this is something that's really difficult to sort of get feedback from the people who are actually using this framework day to day. So if you're an engineering manager, your team, if they see something wrong, they're reading the content, doing this check-in, they might see something that doesn't feel right for their role. They can leave a piece of feedback, and that sort of closes that feedback loop and helps you constantly keep that framework sort of maintained and up to date. So I've been through this check-in. I'll show you, once I submit that, my manager or whoever I chose to assess the check-in gets an email, and they do the same thing. So I'll just show you as a manager what that looks like. I'm now doing Lance's check-in. I'll do exactly the same thing. Once we've both done that, there's a third and final stage where we come together and decide what kind of differences. So for example, here, I think Vivian said that she's working towards this skill. I said that she's meeting. I think she's meeting, so we should talk about that and hopefully agree that she is meeting that, or that she can tell me why she thinks she's working towards it. And once I've completed this check-in and we've agreed on where I am in every skill, I then get an overview of where I'm at in my entire role. And if I do that enough times, I can see the development of my skill and I can keep track of where I'm up to. And it just becomes super clear on how I'm doing, what things I'm working on, what things I'm exceeding on. I said I'd come back to those updates real quick. So we've got a number of things that you can track in progression that help you build evidence towards these skills. You can write a note, you can give a win either to yourself or to someone else, which is kind of a piece of kudos. You can make yourself an action that's something you want to get done. You can give feedback or request feedback from your peers. And all these things track towards, you'll see them in your check-in, and they track towards helping you measure your growth. So hopefully I've shown a little bit about how you can use progression to both build and maintain this content. This is like huge sort of framework of content, and also engage with it over time and track your growth. Anyone got any questions about the demo, anything they've just seen? We can move on otherwise. All good, makes sense, sweet. Let's see. Can I share this again? Brilliant. So, first off, why do you need one of these? Hopefully by that demo, it's fairly clear, but the key points for me is that a framework provides clarity for everyone involved. There's none of those misunderstandings that lead to someone feeling like they're underperforming or not knowing how to get their promotion. Identify strengths and weaknesses. So as a manager, that's super easy now for me to see who's doing what against which of those skills, and just generally creates a much more transparent and fair work environment so that progression can happen in an objective way. A bunch of other stuff as well that are like nice side effects here. Onboarding becomes much easier when your role description is just there for you. It demonstrates as like a flag in the sand that says we are committing to fairness and career development, which is really important for employees right now. And if you were like me and you were made a manager originally without much support, then having these tools really helps. I was sort of left stranded when I was first become a manager, and just having data at my fingertips is super useful. The managers just become better managers with this stuff. So when it comes to creating career frameworks for engineers, I've got 4 key things that I think are really important. Firstly, engagement is the #1 metric. What this means is that if you've got an incredible framework that's super complex and really accurate and built out so well and describes all the skills, but no one's looking at it and no one's using it regularly to reflect on their role, and managers aren't using it in one-to-ones, that content is useless. So we need people to engage with this. The framework cannot exist separately from our team. What I mean by that is you could build the most incredible engineering framework that describes absolutely every part of being an engineer, but if it doesn't map to what's important for your team at this time, and your priorities and your values, then it's also not going to be that useful, and it's going to cause a lot of confusion. So if your team is moving quickly, or if you're growing, or if you're building something that's really important and high quality, these things need to be involved. And as that changes, as you grow, as you reorganize, as you learn things, your framework needs to keep on top of those changes too. The final tenet I think is so important is building and engaging with these collaboratively is important. This isn't a Bible that has been passed down to us. This is something that is a dynamic conversation between us as managers and people leaders and department leaders and team members. And engineers in particular love feeling like they're involved. And so building collaboratively and iterating collaboratively on this framework with the engineers fosters much more trust in the process. And then when it comes to engagement, makes that engagement much easier. Right, a few common challenges I've seen when it comes to career development in engineering, in particular around engineering frameworks. How to get started? If anyone here is building a framework or starting to build a framework, I guess this one might be helpful for you. We have a lot of people say like there's just too much out there. So the thing we always say is start with a single position. Most people have in their mind quite clearly what a senior engineer looks like, right? So start there. Write down what a senior engineer looks like. Write down the 3 skills that you think they need to display. Don't go out and look at what a perfect engineer is. Look at what you think at your team a senior engineer should do, and write that down. It's really that simple. If you're stuck on what skills and writing good skill content, Progression has a huge library of content that we have written and verified and checked for bias, which we think is really useful. So starting there is a really good place. There's a lot out there on the web as well. Hopefully we can put a few links to things. Alex, they're in the notes if you're able to paste those in. To 3, thank you. 3 really great frameworks that we've seen out on the internet. Wise, Dropbox, and Farewell. Really great content there. Progression also has AI building that. You write in a skill name and it spits you out a really great skill content. So that's really useful too. Thank you, Alex. Another big one is how many skills, and particularly how many tracks. When it comes to engineering, there's this constant debate between should we be T-shaped generalists, should we be specific front-end versus back-end versus DevOps engineers? How many tracks do I have in my framework? Well, like I said, when it comes to skills, the heuristic is simplicity, right? Like you saw that check-in, and even if not using Progression, just engaging generally with a framework. If there's 24 skills in my role, that can be very difficult for me to be motivated to check in against or even just engage with. So keeping it simple is the key. If you have can write Kubernetes charts and can teach about JavaScript prototypal inheritance and can do Ruby metaprogramming, these are all so low level that they lock engineers in and encourages checkbox exercises where managers could just go through and check the box if they can or can't do it, and engineers expect promotions at the end of the checkbox exercise. And unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. We don't always have the opportunity for promotions. And besides that, engineers vary drastically and profiles vary between engineers. So someone might have different ambitions or different skill sets. So keeping skills at a certain high enough level really helps there. Likewise with teams, the one rule for me is if you've got head of front end and a head of back end, you need front end and back end frameworks. If you're working as one team, keep it as one team so that you're not stepping on each other's toes. And as you grow, you can spin out those teams. Big one for me in engineering in general, you start getting feedback about someone that maybe not performing up to what we think good looks like. But the framework sort of says it doesn't help us. It says they can write good code, fine. They can communicate, okay, what does that really mean? So I think the danger here is that we all have a sense of what good looks like in our heads. Like we have opinions. It's not a bad thing to go with what's in our heads and put that into our framework, right? Like it's not a bad thing to put that down and start there. And if you don't do that, you get in a situation where you start feeling like someone's underperforming or not meeting the standards you've all agreed upon. But you can't quite describe why that is because the framework isn't helping you. So making sure the framework matches what you really think and what you're actually talking about with your peers is super important to avoid that. Right, that was my sort of common pitfalls. Because it's such a small group, I didn't know if anyone, I mean, we've got sort of 8 minutes. If anyone had anything on their mind about career progression, I've got a few things here. Big one is IC versus management. You get engineers hitting that seniority level where they want more money, more responsibility, but they don't want to manage people. How do we deal with that? Human versus craft skills or soft versus hard skills, technical versus non-technical. And do we over-index on, I hear a lot of people talking about over-indexing on technical skills. And helping engineers frequently reflect, I think, is something that I've really struggled with. So we can talk about that too. So I don't know if anyone any of those look interesting, or if anyone's got any questions or problems they've been working with, maybe the room can help. If not, I can.
No, nothing for me, but I'm just curious to know what you have to say in general. So
Okay, cool.
any,
I can.
any of the ones you choose, I think, are good with me.
Yeah. Okay, I think the most interesting one is human versus craft skills. I think when it comes to IC versus management, a lot of companies now have that like staff plus sort of tree that's there for people to become more senior in within a technical sphere as opposed to a people sphere, which I think is the way to go on that one. Human versus craft skills is really important. A lot of people, engineers really see writing, helping people develop as a technical exercise, and developing their technical skills to become a better engineer. I think in general in engineering, we over-index on that massively, and actually writing software and building products in general is a people problem, and the code is just the tooling. So when it comes to senior engineers and above, what I really look for is being able to communicate, being able to make hard prioritization decisions, being able to bring the team with you, being able to write code that is considering the future and the team around you, rather than being able to show hard technical skills. So I think that's a real common pitfall for engineering teams, and actually building a real culture of feedback and sort of open discussion around what it means to be a good team is really, really important for everyone to develop in their careers. And I think that's something that engineers are generally less good at compared to a lot of other disciplines. So that's something that I think is really important. I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that, or if they've seen anything similar. But if not, I can move on. Cool. Finally, I think particularly for engineers, I've seen this doesn't this is a generalization and doesn't apply to everyone, but engineers writing code and shipping is a lot more attractive than thinking hard about how I've done and what I'm good at and bad at and how I demonstrated that. And so I think it's really easy for engineers to fall out of the habit of frequent reflection. And I think the real key to career development for people, when I talk to people about what's the act of progressing in your career, it's about frequent reflection and recording evidence. I think make notes of when you do good things, when you do bad things, when you get feedback, and helping engineers do that is so important. I think it's a major role of an engineering manager or a manager in general, is to hold people accountable for their own progression. Right? We can't help people do the work. We can't do the work for them. We can't tell them what they're going to progress into, but we can hold them accountable for doing their own work and help them, because there's obviously so much going on day to day that this often falls to the side. And it's not as difficult as it seems to take 10 minutes to think, what did I do well this week? Or to ask someone for feedback on a meeting you ran, or a PR that you pull request that you merged, or whatever it is. So I think that's a really important aspect too when it comes to career development for engineers, because the work is hard of developing in your career, and it's just easier to keep writing code. I've definitely found that. So that's some thoughts on that one. We're about at time, so if there's no other questions or thoughts. No worries. Well, if anyone isn't using Progression and wants to take a look in, we'd be happy to chat to you and do a demo. If you're using it and you've got any questions, just you can drop me, I'll put a note in the chat or drop me an email. And yeah, Alex, any other parish notices I've forgotten?
No, we're all good.
Sweet. Well, thanks everyone.